Her people had called them home for thousands of years. The stony silence of bear, the chiding of squirrel, or the drumming whoosh of raven's wings. They were to her as the patter of falling rain or the lapping of ocean tides. But today was different. She should have known better than to come alone. Tucker had warned her. He ventured out alone all the time with his camera, but he was at least 10 years older, probably more, and he knew the risks. She choked back a sob. If only she'd listened. Head spinning with fear and fatigue, she ducked under, over, and around the towering, tilted trees, many of them 2 or 3 meters wide. It was still light enough to pick her way through, but dark enough that there were no shadows. Millie's lungs felt ready to explode by the time the giant spruces began to give way to thicker undergrowth. There was more light here and a spit of rain. The odor of rotting bull kelp and low tide swirled on the breeze, filling her with a sudden rush of hope. Her skiff came into view as she ran, at the edge of the water less than 200 yards below. If she could just make it to the boat, she might have a chance. Long legs and freewheel down the steep incline, the Tlingit girl was sure she was beating her best cross-country record. Her heart sank when she saw the tide was out. It left the bow of her aluminum skiff on the gravel slope, but the stern still bobbed in the shallows, and the shore fell away quickly into deep water. She prayed her little outboard would be able to pull her off the rocks. Air chambers in the carpet of bladder kelp popped and snapped beneath the soles of her boots as she hit the tide line. She fell twice between the line of driftwood flotsam and the edge of the water. Broken shells and barnacle-covered rocks tore her shredded knees and hands, but she didn't care. Sliding to a stop on the slick rocks, she pulled the anchor line off the large stone where she'd looped it, and clambered over the side of the little aluminum boat. Her back to the shore, she sat on an overturned 5-gallon bucket that made up her seat, and worked to coax the reluctant outboard to life. She pumped the bulb on the gas line, opened the choke, then put her back into the starter rope. The 30-horse Tohatsu coughed on the first 2 pulls, as it always did, and she didn't hear the crunch of gravel behind her until it was almost on top of her. Millie Burkett turned to see a face she knew well, smiling at her. One hand still on the starter rope, her eyes shot to the dark woods above the beach. "What are you doing here?" Unwilling to take the time to explain the gravity of their situation, she turned back to the motor to give it another pull. "Never mind," she said. "Just get in. We have to." Something heavy struck the back of her skull, knocking her off the bucket. Reeling, she flailed out with both hands, trying to catch herself, grasping nothing but air. A second blow, more powerful than the first, drove her to her knees. A shower of lights exploded behind her eyes. Molten blades inside her brain spun with sickening regularity, pulsing with each beat of her heart. She pitched forward, against the cold deck, vaguely aware of splintered wood and the copper taste of blood. The fleeting image of a rubber boot passed inches from her face, and the heavy ache in her skull dragged her into blackness. The terrifying realization that she'd been stuffed in some kind of sack hit her all at once. Panicking, she jerked from side to side, finally realizing that only by moving her face away from the rough cloth could she get any air. Her hands were bound in front of her, low at her waist. The rough cloth was there as well, against her hips. The thump of lapping water on an aluminum hull told her she was on the floor of a boat. Nauseated, she pulled her knees to her chest, trying to keep the world around her from spinning out of control. She wanted to scream.
To keep listening to this audiobook, I've left you a link in the description so you can do it, at no cost thanks to Audible's 30-day free trial.